All right, so let's start with those problems. The properties on the Deeds Registry with compromised title, and I suppose the question is why? Why they originally had title deeds, why are they now compromised? And I think the simple answer is that we have a very unaffordable and inaccessible transfer system in South Africa. So just by way of example, if we took a house that's transacting at 220,000 Rand, the formal system, various costs that you have to pay a conveyancer and the deeds office. So for a plain vanilla transfer, nothing out of the ordinary here, don't need to come to the TSC, everything's intact. We're looking at transfer fees of about 9,500 Rand, then we've got some postages and petties, we've got rates clearance certificates, fees for submitting transfer duties, FICA identification, and then of course deeds office registration fees and search fees, and by the end of it we're looking at a fee for the buyer of around 12,820 Rand. On tariff, I'm sure you could negotiate a better rate, but that's for a relatively poor household who needs to buy an affordable property. Some of the complications, the seller might be dead. We'll see in this case, because it's a small estate, the property value is under 250,000 Rand. There are no implications for the buyer. For the seller, there are also costs. The seller, if the seller is dead, there are implications, for the buyer who has to pay another 4,000 Rand or so to the lawyers. So we're looking at up to around 17,000 Rand for a buyer. And as I say, of course, you could negotiate to get a better rate. For the seller, rates on arrears, rates in arrears can be significant. I don't think we see many clients who come to us who are up to date on their rates. Am I right, Lisa? No. So there has to be some negotiation with the city. They have to settle those arrears before the transfer can go through and they can get the rates clearance certificate. I mentioned if the seller is dead, there are no costs here because it's a small estate, so there are no costs for the seller. But if you are a seller of a subsidy property and you're in those 8 years, you're going to have to pay the conveyancer quite a fee, and you're going to have to pay the deeds office quite a fee to get a waiver. What is a waiver? A waiver is a piece of paper from the province to say it's okay for you to sell your house. That's what the waiver is. And sometimes the official who gets the waiver application says, no, it's not okay for you to sell the house. Well, what do you think the person does who wants to sell their house? They just abandon the formal system and sell the house. There's a very, very good informal system that's widely used. So the waiver is one of our particular bugbears, but it's there because of something called Section 10 of the Housing Act, which prevents people from selling their houses for 8 years after acquisition. Many people have lost their title deeds or never received them in the first instance, and in that case, they have to pay for a VA copy, a certified copy of the title deed that's going to cost them another 6,500 Rand. And then often there are clients who have errors on their title deeds that need to be corrected, and so a seller could have to pay 19,000 Rand or so to go the formal system, and of course the alternative, a very affordable, very accessible informal system, which is free. If we're looking at slightly more expensive houses, the price goes up, and there we see a big difference when the seller is dead, which is fairly common, and you have to wind up the estate. This 350,000 Rand house is above the small estates threshold, and so you have to pay 3.5% of the estate value to have that wound up, and you have to pay some additional fees to the master's office. And again, the alternative is to do this for free through the informal system.